the pattern nobody wants to see. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing the country you built your life around is no longer the dominant power in the world, and that you had 18 months to see it coming. That's not a hypothetical. That's where we are right now. My name is Dalio. I spent over 50 years studying markets, empires, and the forces that build and destroy wealth on a generational scale. I founded Bridgewater Associates. I managed money through crashes, crises, and collapses that most people said were impossible, right up until they happened. And I'm telling you this clearly, calmly, and without drama. The United States and the United Kingdom are deep inside a cycle that has ended the same way every single time in recorded history. Not maybe, not possibly, every single time. I didn't want to believe it either. When the data first started pointing in this direction, I pushed back. I stress-tested the models. I looked for the exceptions. I studied the Dutch Empire, the British Empire, the Roman Empire, the Ming Dynasty. I went back to 1400. I mapped every major reserve currency nation across 600 years of history. And the pattern kept appearing, like a fingerprint at a crime scene. Every dominant empire follows the same arc. They rise through productivity, innovation, and strong institutions. They build military and economic power. They export their currency and their culture to the world. And then, slowly, then suddenly, 5 specific forces converge. And the empire doesn't fall off a cliff. It slides, quietly, predictably, until one day, the slide becomes a free fall. We are in the slide. Let me show you the arc of where we've been. From 1900 to the mid-20th century, Britain ruled the world. The pound sterling was the reserve currency. The British Empire covered a quarter of the Earth's landmass. London was the financial capital of the planet. It felt permanent. It felt unshakable. Then came 2 world wars, a debt spiral, and a rising challenger, America. By 1944, at Bretton Woods, the dollar replaced the pound. Almost overnight, Britain went from empire to debtor nation. The transition didn't announce itself with sirens. It arrived quietly, in a conference room in New Hampshire, while most British citizens were still living as though nothing had changed. That's how these transitions work. They happen before the public realizes they've happened. America then took the baton, and for 80 years it ran hard. The dollar became the world's reserve currency. American culture, its music, its movies, its technology, colonized the globe. Its military projected power on every continent. It was the most dominant single nation the modern world had ever seen. But here's what I need you to understand. That 80-year run, in the context of the big cycle, the 250-year pattern I've studied across every major empire, America is now in the late stage, and Britain, still locked into American financial dependency, is riding the same wave down. Now, let me introduce you to the 5 forces, because this isn't about politics. It's not about who you voted for. It's about forces that operate beneath the political surface, tectonic, slow, and unstoppable once they reach a certain momentum. Force 1. The debt and money cycle. This is the one most people half understand and completely underestimate. America is carrying over $34 trillion in national debt. The UK's debt to GDP ratio is at levels not seen since the aftermath of World War II. Both governments are spending money they don't have, borrowing from a future that is running out of patience. Here's the analogy I want you to hold on to. It's like using a credit card to pay your mortgage, then using a second credit card to pay the first one. It works, until it doesn't. And when it stops working, it stops all at once. When a government can no longer service its debt without printing new money, it prints new money. And when it prints new money, the value of every dollar and every pound you hold quietly evaporates. Your savings don't disappear in a bank robbery. They disappear in slow motion while the news talks about something else. That's already happening. Force 2, the internal order breakdown. The wealth gap in America right now is at levels last seen in the 1930s, right before the Great Depression triggered social upheaval that reshaped the entire global order. The top 1% holds more wealth than the entire bottom 90% combined. That's not a political statement. That's a historical stress fracture. When wealth concentrates at this extreme, trust collapses. Trust in institutions, trust in government, trust in the system itself. People stop believing the game is fair, and when enough people stop believing, they stop playing by the rules. We're already seeing it. Political polarization at historic highs, institutional trust at historic lows, a population that is angry, divided, and looking for someone to blame. This is the kindling. Debt is the accelerant, and there's a match being held very close. But debt and division, those are just the surface. The third force is the one that keeps me up at night. The forces hiding in plain sight. Debt and division are visible. You can see them in the headlines. You can feel them at the dinner table. But the third force? It doesn't make the front page. It moves in boardrooms and government ministries, in shipping lanes and trade agreements, in quiet conversations between finance ministers that never get recorded. And by the time most people notice it, it's already done its work. Force 3, the external order shift. Here's what I need you to picture. Imagine a poker table. For 80 years, America has been the player with all the chips. Everyone else has been playing around that reality, hedging, adjusting, accommodating. Because when you hold all the chips, you set the rules. But a new player has been quietly accumulating chips for 40 years. China. In 1980, China's economy was roughly 10% the size of America's. Today, measured by purchasing power parity, the real measure of economic weight, China has either matched or surpassed the United States. It has built the world's largest manufacturing base. It has infrastructure deals across Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Middle East. It has been systematically, methodically, patiently building an alternative world order. This isn't speculation. This is the data. And here's what makes it dangerous for ordinary Americans and Britons. The dollar's power isn't just financial. It's structural. It means America can run deficits that would bankrupt any other nation because the world needs dollars to trade. Oil is priced in dollars. Global debt is denominated in dollars. This is what economists call exorbitant privilege. But that privilege depends on the world choosing the dollar. And the world is beginning to choose differently. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and now several others, are actively building trade systems that bypass the dollar. Saudi Arabia, for decades America's most important energy partner, has begun accepting yuan for oil payments. That sentence alone should stop you cold. When the dollar loses its reserve status, not if, when, the rules of the game change overnight. America can no longer export its inflation to the rest of the world. It has to absorb it at home. Interest rates spike. Import costs explode. The standard of living that Americans have taken for granted, built partly on that exorbitant privilege, contracts sharply and suddenly. Britain follows. Because Britain's financial system is so deeply intertwined with America's that when Wall Street catches a cold, the City of London gets pneumonia. This is how the British felt in 1944. Except they didn't see it coming. You do. Force 4, acts of nature. Now I want to address something that gets dismissed too quickly in financial circles. COVID-19 didn't create America's problems. It revealed them. A pandemic tore through a society and exposed every structural weakness simultaneously. The fragility of supply chains, the inadequacy of public health infrastructure, the speed at which governments would print trillions of dollars to paper over systemic cracks. In the big cycle framework, acts of nature, pandemics, droughts, floods, resource scarcity are not random interruptions. They are accelerants. They take a system already under stress and push it past its tolerance threshold faster than any political event could. Think of it this way. A building with a cracked foundation doesn't collapse in a calm day. It collapses in a storm. The storm didn't break the foundation. The crack was always there. The storm just finished the job. Right now, climate disruption is straining agricultural systems across the globe. Water scarcity is becoming a geopolitical flashpoint. The frequency of supply chain shocks is increasing. Each one, individually, is manageable, but stacked on top of Force 1 and Force 2 and Force 3, they become something else entirely. They become the storm hitting the cracked foundation. I want to pause here and make this personal for a moment. Because I'm not talking about abstractions. I'm talking about what happened to ordinary British citizens in the 1950s. People who had saved responsibly, worked hard, played by the rules. They woke up in a country that was quietly, systematically becoming less powerful, and their savings, their pensions, their purchasing power reflected that decline in ways they couldn't fully explain, and no one clearly told them. They weren't reckless, they weren't foolish, they just didn't see the system shifting beneath their feet. That's the real danger here. Not that a catastrophe arrives and announces itself, but that a slow, grinding decline erodes your wealth, your options, and your children's future, while the news cycle keeps you focused on everything except the tectonic shift happening underneath. This is why I've been speaking publicly about this. Not to cause panic, to cause awareness. Because forces 1 through 4, as serious as they are, they can be navigated. History shows us people who protected themselves, who repositioned, who moved early and moved wisely. But Force 5 is different. Force 5 is the one none of the economists are modeling correctly, the one that makes all the others irreversible. And it's not coming. It's already here, 18 months, and what you do with them, Force 5, is the one that changes everything. Not because it's the most violent, not because it's the most visible, but because it doesn't just accelerate the cycle. It rewrites the rules of the cycle entirely. Force 5, technology and the currency of power. Every major empire in history controlled the most critical resource of its era. The Dutch controlled global trade routes. The British controlled industrial manufacturing and coal. America controlled oil, finance, and the internet. Whoever controls the defining resource of an era controls the world order built around it. We are in the middle of a resource transition right now. The defining resource of the next era is not oil, it's not gold, it's not even military hardware. It's data. It's artificial intelligence. It's the ability to process information faster, make decisions smarter, and automate systems at a scale that makes traditional economic competition almost irrelevant. And here's the brutal truth that most Western policymakers are not fully confronting. China has a structural advantage in this race, not because their technology is superior today, but because of how they've positioned themselves to win it. A centralized government that can direct national resources toward AI development without the friction of democratic debate. A population of 1.4 billion generating data at a scale that trains AI systems faster than anything the West can match. A long-term strategic patience, 50-year plans, not 4-year election cycles, that treats this technological race as existential. Meanwhile, America and Britain are fighting about it, debating regulation, fragmenting investment, letting short-term corporate incentives drive decisions that should be made at a civilizational level. This is not a technology story. This is a power story. Whoever leads in AI leads in military capability, economic productivity, financial system architecture, and surveillance infrastructure. The nation that controls the AI layer controls the next world order the same way America controlled the dollar layer for the last 80 years. And layered on top of this, digital currencies. Central bank digital currencies are being developed and tested across 130 countries right now. China's digital yuan is already in circulation. When the world's transactions shift to digital currency systems, the nation whose currency architecture becomes the global standard inherits the exorbitant privilege America is about to lose. This is the force that makes the others irreversible. Because once the technological and financial infrastructure of the New World Order is built, Once the rails are laid, switching back becomes nearly impossible. The window to act isn't closing slowly. It's closing fast. Now let me pull all 5 forces together, because this is where the picture becomes undeniable. Force 1. Debt spirals destroying the purchasing power of your currency from the inside. Force 2. Social fractures destroying the institutional trust that holds a society together. Force 3. A rising external power systematically dismantling the global architecture that made Western dominance possible. Force 4. Natural and biological shocks accelerating every weakness already present in the system. Force 5. A technological transition that is redrawing the map of global power in real time. Now here's what makes this moment historically unique. In every previous empire decline I've studied, every single one, these forces appeared sequentially. One would peak, destabilize the system, partially resolve, and then the next would emerge. The cycle played out over decades, sometimes generations. What I'm seeing now, what the data is showing with unmistakable clarity, is that all 5 forces are active simultaneously. For the first time since the 1930s and 1940s, the last time this happened, the world got the Great Depression, the rise of fascism, and the deadliest war in human history, before a new world order finally emerged on the other side. I'm not predicting a repeat of that, but I am telling you, the turbulence that precedes a world order transition is always severe. Always. And the people who navigate it successfully are never the ones who waited for consensus. They are the ones who saw the pattern early and positioned themselves accordingly. So what does 18 months mean? It's not a countdown to collapse. It's a window of clarity, right now. The forces I've described are visible to anyone willing to look at the data honestly. The average person can still make moves, can still reposition, can still build resilience into their financial life before the turbulence becomes undeniable to everyone, because when it becomes undeniable to everyone, the easy options are already gone. Think about 2 people standing on that British shoreline in 1943. Person A sees the data, understands that the pound's dominance is ending, begins diversifying, hard assets, international exposure, reduced dependency on a single nation's financial system, uncomfortable conversations, difficult decisions, short-term friction for long-term survival. Person B waits, watches the news, trusts that the institutions that have always held will continue to hold, tells himself it's different this time, that his country is too important to decline. By 1950, Person A has preserved and grown his wealth through the transition. Person B is wondering what happened to the world he thought he understood. I'm not here to tell you exactly what to buy or sell. I'm here to tell you what I've spent 50 years learning. Diversify across currencies. Don't hold your entire financial life in a single nation system. Understand the difference between financial assets that depend on government promises and hard assets that hold value independent of any government's ability to keep its promises. Gold, commodities, productive land, equity in companies with real global earnings. These are not exotic investments. These are the moves that serious wealth has always made at the turn of a world order. And most importantly, think in cycles, not quarters. The person who wins through a world order transition is not the smartest person in the room. It's the person with the longest time horizon. The one who can hold discomfort today in exchange for clarity tomorrow. Empires don't announce their endings. There's no press release, no ceremony, no moment where a voice from above says, "This is it. This is the turning point." The British Empire didn't end with a bang. It ended with a quiet document signed in New Hampshire while the British public was still singing patriotic songs. But the data always announces it. The debt levels, the wealth gaps, the rising challenger, the institutional decay, the technological transition. It's all there. It has always been there. For those willing to read it without flinching. I've read it, and I'm telling you, clearly, calmly, and without drama, the 18 months ahead are not the end, but they are the moment where awareness becomes action. where those who understood the pattern separate permanently from those who didn't. The question isn't whether the cycle is turning. The question is which side of it you'll be on.